Oh my God. Hello. We're live.
We are live. Drew, what is going on, my brother?
Chilling, man. Just had some pizza. Just watched Demopolis do some amazing groundwork in the last little tape I was watching right before the show. So I'm excited to say the least. How are you, bud?
I'm good, man. I'm good. This is going to be a show for Contender Series Week 2. We got one of our Ring of Combat alum in the main event here, Body
Oh
Bags.
yeah.
Body Bags. So we,
Super
we,
Piper.
we've been at two of his fights at Ring of Combat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we're going to go from there. The only bad part about this week is the lines were released last week. They were not released yet. So as of now, I don't see any lines. I'll keep updating it and see. I'll try to see if lines become available. Because last week when we were on, there were lines. Let me just update it one more time on my phone. I
Let
can
me
always
go
bring
look
up
at
best fight picks. Yeah, no, best fight odds do not have lines right now. So we're just gonna go. We're just gonna go through the 5 fights. We'll give you who we like. And Drew, I'm gonna ask you to kind of predict the line and based on that line that you're predicting, maybe which way you would bet if you had a bet. So I know you have a nice little take on this first fight. So I'll pick up where you lead off. I'll introduce a few. Anthony Adams and Impa Kasangane, I believe it.
Kasangana. Yeah.
Kasangane. Anthony Adams. This is a good fight. I think this is a better card than Week 1
Oh,
overall.
absolutely.
You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? There's a lot of guys here with experience against UFC fighters. A lot of guys, a lot of LFA fighters on this card. A lot of guys that have championships in other, in LFA and other, organizations. So this should be a pretty good card. But I'm gonna leave it up to you, bro. Anthony Adams, 8-1. Impa is 6-0. Anthony Adams, pretty good pedigree. Elevation Fight Team, Colorado. Impa last year was in Contender Series. Dana said that he was raw, so he didn't want to give him a contract, but he did win his fight. I believe that was against Caitlin Hill. So how do you break down this one, bro?
Well, for me, I mean, I'll pick up right where you left off. So his literally last fight, I mean, he's had 3 bouts canceled since then, but his last fight was in the Contender Series. So he knows exactly what it takes, number one, to get there. He knows exactly what it takes to be there. And the last time he was there, he fought Killian Hill, who was a very experienced fighter. He was actually favored, like a heavy, heavy favorite. I think he was the biggest favorite of the card that night.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that stood out to me. Like the last time, Impa was a plus 440 going into this fight, and that year alone, he had 5 fights going into that fight. So he had fought already 5 times as a pro, um, just leading into the Contender Series. So the guy, number one, is a freak athlete. Number two, um, knows what it takes and has what it takes. And I think even Michael Bisping was quoted saying that, like, the guy at that time was very early in his game. So, just like Dana's decision, he was with Dana saying that keep this guy around, maybe give him a development deal, give him something that to keep this guy at least in the radar. So, so he doesn't just go along the wayside. And in this fight, compared to Anthony Adams, who I absolutely love too. I just see my man Impa being the stronger fighter and the more aware fighter, considering that he's already been at that stage. And to me, I think I texted you earlier. He almost reminds me of like a Usman. He just does everything right. He's been there fundamental. You know what I'm saying? In every spot and every bad spot, I saw him do all of the right things. His striking at first, I saw 2 tapes. One when it was very early in his career, and one when it was the most recent, which was the Contender Series. And his striking definitely has improved. But one thing that always remained is that everything that he touches and everything that he throws, it's with power, and it definitely hurts the other guy every time he touches somebody. Um, so I don't know, man. I see this one being exciting. I know you're probably leaning probably towards Anthony Adams. I don't know. Maybe I'm just assuming.
Bro, you
Uh,
know I'm not leaning towards Anthony Adams. What are you
maybe.
talking about? You know
Good,
this. All right,
good,
I'm
good,
cutting you
good,
off right now. Now you're just gonna
good.
lie to people. All right. So if anybody watched the show last week, they know that Drew and I were on. the opposite side of 4 of those 5 fights, right? Am I correct? Last week, I
Yeah.
think we were opposite side.
Yep.
Today, from what I know, we're basically in agreement with at least 3 of these fights. So we're gonna have to see, but we are in agreement with this fight. He's picking um, Impa. I'm gonna call him Impa. I don't know what how we pronounce
Kitangane.
this.
Kitangane.
Kasangane. This is a fight where I watched film on Anthony Adams first, and I was like, wow, this he's got some pretty good pedigree. He's 8-1. A lot of decisions. A lot of his fights go to decision, but he trains at elevation. He's from Colorado. Trains at elevation. For 185, he looks good. He just doesn't look like he has a lot of power, and
He's
that's
big
the
though. He's
he is
big.
big, but he doesn't finish people. And I just feel like at 185, if these guys like again, the main event on this card is at 185, right?
Hmm.
If the and those guys are finishers. To me, these guys haven't shown that they're finishers. I think Impa can be a finisher because I think he's a freak athlete. But these are two very, very good athletes, athletic guys. You go back to last week's main event. There wasn't much athleticism, just pure athleticism in that main event. This week, you got two athletes right here. Um, and I think Impa has more power, and I
Hmm.
think Anthony Adams is going to realize that real early in this fight. So I think he's going to come out with his. He's got a real technical striking game plan. I like it. He'll mix in the takedowns, but I think that Impa is going to hurt him with his counter punching, and then at that point he's going to get more and more confidence, and then he's going to start leading the dance, and I think that's when Impa pulls away. So I'm on Impa in this fight, and I'm even going to go. This is what I really think. I think Anthony Adams is going to be the favorite fighter here when this line comes out. I
I
think we're
agree.
going to get dog money on Impa.
Yeah. I mean, I was honestly about to say that. Like one last thing about this fight, to set the line. If we have to go to favorite and the dog here, I'm gonna put Impa as the dog again. And the main reason why he's going to be the dog in this fight, in my opinion, is because he hasn't fought, in a while, literally a year, you can say. And his opponent, Anthony Adams, being the bigger fighter and the fighter who likes to close the distance, is the better striker, would seem to have the more experience and has fought more recently. I see him being the favorite here. Now, don't get me wrong. Anthony Adams is dangerous when he gets into the clinch, when he tries to get you up against the fence. But he's going to try to go up against an athlete or Impa who likes that grind. And not only that, although his hands may not be as fast, who knows what we're going to see, dude. It's been a year. People already saw what he was doing, and at the time when he fought with only limited experience, I think he had fought only 215 days since his actual first fight. He was already showing massive potential. So with a
Right.
whole year of preparation and already knowing exactly what it takes to be in that cage, I'm sure he's going to be looking for the finish. I mean, so for me, I feel like Impa's going to be the dog here, because I don't feel like everybody has done their homework on him, or he just hasn't been fighting as much. But not as a big dog as last time, because last time he was
Well,
plus 440, so that was crazy.
yeah, no, he was a big dog last time, and I think the thing here too is, he I believe he's from North Carolina, or he trains in North Carolina because he's a training partner of Brian Barberena, from what I remember
Yep, yep, yep,
from
yep.
the,
He
the
fights out
Contender
of
series.
Charlotte, North Carolina, and he's actually a training partner of a guy who fought last night. What is Stolholtz or something like that? I think it was. So
Yeah,
he comes from a good background and a good training camp, and with the whole year of preparation and exactly only having this fight to focus on, I would assume, because I mean every other bout was canceled with coronavirus. So I'm sure he's been staying ready. So I'm excited for this.
yeah,
Um,
and you stole my closing comment, but this guy is. I mean, Dana called him a stud athlete. That's what Dana
exactly.
said. After the last Contender series, I wanted to see what Dana said. I wanted to see why he didn't give him a contract. So I listened to Dana's breakdown, and he said he's a stud athlete. He needs some seasoning. I think he's in a good camp. He's in a camp where UFC guys are. I think that's gonna help. We haven't seen him in a year. We have no idea how good this guy's gonna be when he comes out, and that's the biggest thing with some of these lines and some of these fights. We just don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? These guys haven't fought in a year. How much better could this guy have gotten? Like you just said. So I like him. I'm gonna be betting Impa. I think I'm gonna get dog money on him. So
Same here.
Drew, I'll introduce this next fight and then see what you say about this one. This is TJ Laramie and Daniel Swain. And this is another fight where when I watched these guys on film,
Amazing.
I was, I mean, I'm very impressed with TJ Laramie. And
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Swain is a perfect dance partner for him because he's going to bring the fight. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
absolutely. He's going forward.
Yeah, he's going forward. He's 8-5 in his last 13 fights. His last 13 fights have all finished.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be my introduction. This is at 145 pounds. These guys usually fight at that weight class. They're used to this. Swain has a lot of experience. Laramie is only 22 years old. He also has a brother. I forget his brother now. Trey? Is it Trey Laramie? I forget what his brother's name is. Tony, I think it is. Tony Laramie.
Yeah, Tony Laramie.
Who, right,
Mm-hmm.
who also fights and actually has a fight within the next 2 weeks, I believe. Not in Contender Series, but somewhere else. But Laramie looks real good. So what do you think here, Drew?
Honestly, these two fighters on this card might be the most experienced. Um, and not because of the fight, because all these fighters are current champions or ex champions and have been at LFA and have been at at very prestigious promotions. But just look at Laramie, number two in Canada, number one in Ontario, number two in Quebec, fought for TKO, has been the champion, has fought multiple rounds, has fought multiple fights where he's fought 5 rounds. So I mean, when it comes to pro MMA experience, TJ Laramie, the truth, being such a young age, what that tells me, he was already a champion at 20, right? In the tape that I was watching. Now, what does that tell me from a young athlete like that? This dude's been living this, breathing this, probably been doing this homeschooled. Like, I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised, just breathing and living the MMA life. So this kid, he's literally bred for this, and it shows in his fight. I mean, the dude's 5'5", right? He's tiny, right? But he knows exactly how to win. He gets in there, his wrestling, good luck trying to get him down. It's not going to be a good, it's it'll be tough. And then even when he gets down, this is the most surprising part. The last fight that I saw, he fought a 36-year-old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, right? Something Nogueira. It wasn't a Nogueira brother. It was just a guy who happened to be Nogueira. And not only did he take him down, but he didn't even settle for passing the guard. He would just take him down, go into his half guard, and just beat him up, beat up Nogueira until he was able to mount him, and pretty much had his way with him, doing whatever he wanted. And Nogueira was the bigger, longer fighter. I think he only had Laramie in trouble maybe once or twice when he took his back. Um, but even then, Laramie looked totally in control and ready to go. Now he's going up against Swain, where Swain, if you just look at the last, the 8-5 record that you just mentioned, I mean, the dude's here to fight. If I had to pick or choose or just try to read Dana White's mind, I'd say this is his favorite fight of the card or fighter on the card, which is Swain. The dude's here for the business. He's not here for anything else. He's here to come forward and get the finish. And as we all know, in this Contender Series, that's what kind of gets you the ticket, the finish. So if you're here to try to win by decision or unanimous decision, um, I mean, I guess I hope you kind of want a development deal, I guess. But these guys are here for a finish, and Daniel Swain is literally the guy, the prototype for the Contender Series. He's dangerous from pretty much anywhere. He brings the fight on the ground. Forget about it. That guillotine, amazing. So I mean, for me, this might be almost the first time I might pick against a jiu-jitsu guy, which is Swain, because I feel like Swain is the better grappler here. But the way that Laramie nullifies grapplers, I don't feel like, I think Swain wants to keep it on his feet more than anything to keep Laramie away with his distance. That's the only way I see it. A favorite here, oddly enough, I think it's going to be Laramie. Not by much, but I say Laramie. I see you.
My bad, bro. My son just did PP down, so he's 2 years old. He's potty training. He just did the little victory dance that he, you know, he used the potty, so I had to give him a little high five.
My man. Nah, that's cool, man. That's cool.
That's what I had to do right there. But you know what, Drew, you're stealing all my thunder. I put all this time into tape study, right? And then you say everything that I was gonna say. So this is basically two fights in a row. So now I'm gonna look at my notes to try to figure out what I can add to the picture that you just painted for us, because it was exactly what I would have said. So I go and I look at these two fighters, and I'm on Laramie too. So again, we're 2 for 2 tonight, and I think that's going to be a theme this week. Just my, throwing that out there. Laramie actually beat Charles Jourdain for the TKO featherweight belt.
Mm-hmm.
That was his first of two belts, and Jourdain already has two fights in the UFC. You know what I mean? And he's looked pretty impressive in those fights. Those weren't like walks in the park. You know what I mean? He looked pretty impressive. Laramie has lost to Alex Morgan twice,
Mm-hmm.
first round knockout. But again, this kid is now 22 years old. I believe that was over 2 years ago. So that was at the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
I mean, he totally dismantled Andrew Cruz. I just think that Laramie is a big time prospect. This is a kid who I can see him getting himself into title contention in the UFC. I don't know if he's going to have a lot of success at 145 in the UFC. I think he may have at some point try to get down to 135 once he gets himself going and stuff like that. But right now, I mean, you got Swain here, who if he doesn't get him out in the first round, he's done. Swain, if you look at his fights, and I opened it up, I threw it to you, and I said he's 8-5 in his last 13 fights. Only one fight went to round three. Most fights are round one and round two. Even
Mm-hmm.
the fight against Alex De Silva, he had Alex De Silva in some trouble in round one. He may have Laramie in trouble in round one if he gets a takedown.
Yeah.
And if he does get that takedown and gets him in a little bit of trouble, all Laramie has to do is just get this to round two. And Swain will gas. And that's why I think his fights end early, because he knows he doesn't have a gas tank. So he just goes for it. So I think this fight is going to finish. I think Laramie is going to finish him probably in round two. I'm going to call the knockout KO TKO in round two.
Who's
Swain
the
is going to
favorite?
gas. What is it?
Who's the favorite?
I think Laramie's going to be the favorite here. I really do. I think they brought Swain in to fight Laramie, if that makes sense. He's like I opened it up. I think he's the perfect dance partner because he's going to bring the fight to him, and he's gonna get going right away. You know what I mean? There's not gonna be any waiting around. Once these guys hit gloves, they're gonna go.
I
And
agree.
there's gonna be a pace. There's gonna be pressure. So I'm picking Laramie. I think Laramie will be the favorite, and I think he'll be about minus 170. That's what I'm calling. I didn't ask you, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, I didn't really put it in terms of number. I just put Laramie over Agent Orange, Daniel Swain, as like a slight favorite. So like if you're looking at Daniel Swain, it's probably like a plus, 110,
Right.
105. Like, dude, this one could almost be a pick 'em, honestly. And the reason I say that is because Daniel Swain, I mean, he's gonna come out here and throw the leather, and I don't think he wants to go to the ground with Laramie because Laramie, like I said earlier, is just going to nullify anything that Daniel Swain can throw at him, unless he catches him in some weird guillotine and a family guillotine or something like that when Laramie shoots a shot. But that's highly unlikely, with a guy as built like Laramie and as small as Laramie. There's no neck there for you to grab, man, and especially a guy who has already been in high pressure situations. Like you like for instance, you just said it. Daniel Swain has never seen a third round. Laramie has fought five round fights already more than
Yeah,
once. So I mean, this is why I give Laramie probably the edge. But the reason why I wouldn't give him such a huge edge on the cards, I mean, on the betting cards, I should say, is because Daniel Swain is very, very, very dangerous, no matter which way you put it. So this is going to be another exciting one, and I'm really, really excited.
yeah. And I would say the inside the distance line on that fight. I have no problem betting that line. Again, Laramie, I think Laramie finishes this KO TKO in round two. That's my call. I'll see what the lines are when they come out. But inside the distance, if that's under minus 200, I think you got to hit that right away
Yeah.
because that's going to change.
One more question.
Um,
One more question before we
Go
can
ahead,
keep
bro.
going, because last week you were supposed to ask me these questions, but you didn't ask me. So We already went over 2 fights. So let's
Right.
go back to the first one real quick. Anthony Adams versus Impa. Contract or no contract?
I think Impa wins the fight and gets the contract. I don't think Dana White can say 2 years in a row that you're not ready yet. You need some seasoning. So I think if Impa wins the fight, he gets the contract. I think if Edwards wins the fight, it's going to be via decision. So I don't think he would get the contract. I think Impa's the only one that could really get the contract with the finish.
All right. Now fight number 2, Laramie and Swain. I mean, me personally, I almost didn't even have to answer it because I'm on the same side with you with Impa. He's already been there before, so if he just comes out here and gets a finish, that's easy. He's in the league, easy.
Yeah.
Now, let's go Laramie and Daniel Swain. You go first.
I think Laramie's going to finish him in round 2. So you finish this guy in round 2. Laramie's the kind of guy that you can put in the UFC and just he'll have a nice smooth career. Just let him play it out. Don't give him any big time guys just yet. Start him bottom of the barrel and let him get a couple wins under his belt. He's 22 years old. You don't want to throw him to the fire at 22, 23 years old. You know what I mean? So I think you just take his career nice and slow, and by the time he's 26, he'll be fighting the big time fights.
It's pretty weird, right? The way I see this is almost TJ might get the same treatment as Impa did, because Laramie is still very young, and although he's been a champion before and has fought in many rounds and already has the experience, he still is young. So you're right. You wouldn't want to throw him into a division where he could possibly get hurt at such a young age and burn out, if anything. If anyone's gonna get a contract in this fight, it's gonna be Swain. The reason I say that is because he's 29 years old, number one. So he already has, that wear and tear. He, coming up on that man strength. And on top of that, like I said earlier, he is, in my opinion, probably, and this is me making a complete guess, I didn't hear this anywhere or whatever. If it was me, I'd be like, this is Dana's favorite right here. Besides him or Adrian Yanez, this guy, Daniel Swain, is probably his favorite, Adrian Orange. So if anyone's gonna get a contract in this fight, it'll probably be Daniel Swain. Like if he gets a finish, which I know he's gonna go out there and throw everything and the kitchen sink at this guy, yeah, it's gonna be good. So
well, and again, I don't disagree with you. If Swain finishes his fight in round 1, he's getting a contract. I agree with you. I don't think he's finishing this fight in round 1. I think he may threaten in round 1.
No. You see, you say round 1. I feel like if he just gets a finish, period. If he just gets a finish,
Drew, I'm telling you, he doesn't have a gas tank, bro.
All right, let's see what happens, man. I mean, this one's only 3 rounds, so we know who's gonna have a gas tank. TJ Laramie, who just like last comment as a cliffhanger before we move on to the next fight. Pay attention to it. TJ Laramie had a 5-round fight at 20 years old. He never sat once every break for the round. Never sat once. Stood straight up and kept coming forward. So you want to talk about a gas tank, and you think that Daniel Swain doesn't have one? Ooh, that first round is going to be very exciting.
Ooh, I think that first round is exciting, and I think Laramie finishes in round 2. That's what I think. But listen, let's get to Vanessa Denopoulos and Corey McKenna. And I am straight up. I'm gonna introduce this fight, and then you can tell me. You can just agree with me because I know what side you're on already. Yo. So I am very sure Vanessa's going to get this fight to the ground. Corey may even be the reason it gets to the ground. But this fight is going to get to the ground. And Vanessa is very comfortable on her back. And she's the LFA strawweight champ. McKenna, I believe most of her experience is over in Cage Warriors. I believe she's fought about 5 times in Cage Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
But she's over here now. I noticed that she's at Team Alpha Male now. But the Demopoulos is 5-1. Her loss was to Caitlin Chukagian, who fought for the 125 title.
Just recently, like this past year.
Yeah, in the last year. She's a BJJ practitioner. 3 finishes by sub. She's also a strip club owner. Did you know
awesome.
She is a strip club owner. Stripper Bible is the name of her strip club. She is the owner operator of the strip club. Okay, you can look that up. That she has done interviews promoting that. I don't think her striking looks very good. This is the kind of fight where when I saw Denopolis, I was like, all right, if it goes to the ground, she's gonna be fine. If it stays on the feet, she could get pieced up. And then I see McKenna, and I'm like, this isn't the one to piece her up.
Mm-mm.
So you know what I mean. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think on the feet, the fight isn't gonna be won or lost on the feet. There may be some striking on the feet, but this fight is going to be won or lost once it hits the ground. And I think whether if Denopolis gets it to the ground, that's bad news for McKenna. If McKenna gets it to the ground, even if Denopolis is off her back, I still think that's bad news for McKenna. So I think Denopolis wants to get it to the ground, work her BJJ. I'm gonna say she's probably gonna get a finish with her BJJ. But again, I know you watch tape and you're the BJJ practitioner, so let me know as a BJJ player, does she get this finish? Because I'm going Denopolis here.
Well, some things, aside, well, you just dropped the gem, letting me know that she owns a strip club. I didn't even know that. But I was gonna bring in a little bit of gem and say that aside from her MMA career and being an owner operator of a strip club, she's also a multiple time Pan Am champion. She just won second place in Worlds this past year which is one of the most prestigious grappling tournaments in the IBJJF. If you're pretty much a jiu-jitsu player of any sorts, that's one of your biggest tournaments of the year, or if the biggest for you in your career as a jiu-jitsu player. Now, what I see that's interesting here, and what I noticed that was interesting to me when I was watching Vanessa, is that I expected her to go initially straight to the ground, considering how good of a ground player she is. But she she stood on her feet in the last fight that I was watching, in some tape that I was watching. She pretty much came forward and wanted to stand. And the only time that she ever attacked the ground is when she got taken down. So I agree with you that if this fight at all goes to the ground, it'll be because the Hobbit, Corey McKenna, will take it there. Because I don't feel like, if at anyone between these two has better striking, oddly enough, it's Vanessa. Because they're both very stationary strikers. They're both very, very sticking to the plan. So they'll throw the 1-2 and try to get right to the ground however possible. That's Corey, though, I'm speaking for. On the other hand, that's what I expected from Vanessa. And Vanessa surprised me. She came forward throwing kicks, throwing punches, getting blasted, by the way, but still walking right through fire. And then anytime that she got taken to the ground, I mean, within an instant, almost before even her back hit the ground, she was already in a submission. So that goes to show you her pedigree. And then if you look at Corey and her record and some of her past fights, the way that she's won most of her fights have been by rear naked choke or ground and pound, which literally makes sense that she's a team alpha, because a lot of those
And
fighters,
her
they're very, very good ground and pound players, and
right.
they finish pretty much anybody on the ground. They can do that. So this fight is going to be on the ground. Look for Corey to try to get there, try to maybe work her ground and pound, which is what she's good at and what she won her last fight with, light with. Now, if I have to put a line on this, Vanessa's going to be the favorite here. Um, I feel like Vanessa might be like a huge favorite here, something like minus 200 or something like that. And that's only because she, in this fight, she seems like the bigger fighter. And not only that, she's fought for the LFA and more recently. So in this case, I feel like that makes her the favorite here. And because of her grappling pedigree on the ground, matching both of these girls, she's like head and shoulders above McKenna, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. That's only me.
McKenna's opponents are also very inexperienced, kind of low level. So this is a big step up for her.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know what I mean? You're going from low level fighters to fighting basically the LFA champion. You know what
Yeah,
I
I mean,
mean?
I was literally, you took it right out of my mouth. I mean, the girl she's fighting, Vanessa, is literally the champion. So
Yeah.
um, this is not only a huge step up in competition, but on one of the biggest stages too. So it should be fun. And if anyone's gonna be the biggest dog, I'd probably say it's McKenna.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Vanessa's going to be minus 200. And again, I think that line may even go higher. So if you can get something at the minus 170 to minus 200 line when it opens, I would hit that line right away, because I think it's going to go higher once they see the inexperience from McKenna. And I
I
think that's
agree.
going to be a popular parlay piece. If you want a better line, look at Vanessa by a submission. That may be the way to play it. But if you just want to,
Yeah,
if you're just a straight better, I would go Vanessa. So Drew, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna give you this next one. I'll just introduce it and I'll throw it back to you. Adrian Yanez and Brady Huang. Again, Yanez is 10-3. Let me bring this up so everybody can see it. Giannis is 10-3, 5'7", 70.5 inch reach. Brady Huang is 5'8", high school college wrestler, and he's got a decent amount of fights. And then his one loss, I always look for the one loss. His one loss was a KO TKO loss to Martin Day, who fought, I believe, 2 weeks ago on the opening fight of the last UFC card.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to hit Day with a few punches in round one, but Day came out in round two and just cleaned his clock. I believe it got to round two and he cleaned his clock. The Day striking was just way too much, and again, Yanez is a guy who's 10-3. Um, his two losses, his two most recent losses, I should say, were to Domingo Pilarte, split decision, and Miles John, split decision.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those guys are in the UFC with multiple fights, and Miles John is a better wrestler than Huang is. So if you think that Huang is going to be able to have his way with his wrestling, Yanez has already fought a better wrestler. I also listened to an interview that Yanez did with, I mentioned the guy last week, Low Kick MMA. Jordan Ellis
Oh
does
yeah,
some
yeah.
great interviews with these guys. Yanez did an interview with him, and he basically said, two of his training partners, Yanez training partners, have Contender Series fights coming up in the next few weeks. I believe one is like next week or the week after. Then the other guy in his camp is fighting in September, and then they have a very good wrestler in camp that he's rolling, like a 170-pound wrestler. So he obviously has, a guy that's going to be bigger. This fight is at 135. A guy that's going to be bigger that's in camp already. So
Yeah.
what else do you see here? Pick your winner. Pick your line. What do you think, Drew?
Well, here, aside from Swain, Giannis is my favorite fighter on this card. To be completely honest with you. And for reason being is, dude, the guy can bang, and not only can he bang, he comes forward and he eats it. He'll eat your best shot and keep coming forward without even flinching. Um, and considering that the last fight that I saw, he fought it was a wrestler, someone who kept trying to take him down. He stuffed all the takedowns. And not only is he sharp, but he's very, very, very precise with all of his punches, and it stings every time that he lands. It's almost like somebody who fights like with like a grudge or something like that. Whenever I watch him fight, like Giannis, every time he got hit, he'd come back and hit you with two or three even harder. And compared to Huang, who's more of a calculated fighter. In his fight, he came out a lot slower. He came out you know, with a much more calculated pace. And the only time he really threw fire was whenever he was under any type of fire. He tried to utilize his takedowns or trying to get it to the ground. Brady Huang in the fight that I saw. But still, considering what I saw from Yanez, it wasn't really impressive. And so in this fight, if I have to pick a favorite, it's going to be Yanez. And just like in the fight against Martin Day, I see Brady getting blasted. I mean, Brady might be the bigger fighter here, I believe you said, um, but not by much. But he does have the reach by like 5 centimeters, something like that. So I mean, the differences aren't much. But when
Right.
it comes to the differences, whatever Brady has, I'm confident Adrian can take. That's just the way I'm going to say it flat out. I'm confident Adrian Yanez has the chin to take it, and he's going to come out here. And in this fight, which I'm going to ask you now, since we're here, and then I ask you about the fight we just spoke about, I feel like Adrian gets a contract right here. If he
I,
if he comes out and wins in spectacular fashion, which is what I'm assuming he will do, because in this fight, the only way that I see Brady really having some sort of shot is if he can pretty much withstand the onslaught that Adrian Yanez is going to bring on him, because he's going to bring the fire, and it's going to be a pace that I don't feel Brady is ready for. So you picked a couple rounds and finishes. I feel like Adrian Yanez can get this guy out of here in the first round with a KO and then walk out with a contract with a smile on his face. So yeah, man, and just like you said, he has training partners with the same goal. When you have training partners and you train in a room like you know it, and I know it. Like when you have players and teammates who are driven and have the same goal like you, there's literally nothing better than that. So if you're gonna talk about somebody who's a good wrestler, I hope Brady is better than just a high school wrestler because Yanez is gonna bring it, man. He's gonna bring the fire for sure.
Well, you brought me right down narrative street, so that's exactly where I was going to go with this. I think that I we both played basketball,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're part of a team, when you're part of a team sport, it pays to talk about the championship in preparation for what you're looking to achieve during that season.
Yep.
If that makes sense. A championship doesn't just sneak up on you; it's something you prepare for. You know what I mean? So it goes that way in basketball. And like you're saying, to parallel what you just said about the team, he's got two other guys that are looking for these contracts also. This is Yanez's time. He's 26 years old. He's had a couple setbacks against very good guys who are in the UFC, split decision losses. Who Yanez, in the interview that I saw with Jordan Ellis, more or less said he got screwed in those losses. And I'm not even going to debate whether he did or not. The fact is, he thought he got screwed, that he did enough to win those fights. That says a lot. That says I'm not letting this go to the scorecards. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting my contract by finishing this fight.
Yep.
And I think Brady Hwang is the guy to, if you look at the guys that he's fought, yeah, he's 11-1, but these guys are low level, man. He
0 and
fought a
0,
guy.
0 and 2.
I mean, you look at the guy. Luke Stanton is his
Dude,
name.
he
That's
fought
the
one guy who's
first,
0 and 9.
bro. Luke
Is that
Stanton,
him?
Drew. This guy, Luke Stanton. It was the worst tape study fight I have ever seen. Stanton runs across the cage. I'm telling you right now, he runs across the cage, grabs Hwang, goes for the takedown, and basically puts Hwang on top of him. Now I was like, all right, is he pulling guard? Because it didn't look like he was pulling guard. His takedown was to pull him on top of him. Which again, as a BJJ guy, yeah, you pull guard sometimes, but he never went into guard. He got mounted. And then the fight was over within a minute. Like it was the stupidest take. I was like, what did this guy trained for this fight and then did that, pulled that shit? Like,
how,
listen,
how about how about this stat? He fought Nelson Ocampo, who was 0 and 8 at the time, then
twice.
fought him a year later and made him 0 and 9.
I'm just saying he's got low level guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two people on this card have very low level people on their you know
Resume.
current
Yeah.
history, resume, current history. Hwang and what's her name? McKenna.
Yep.
Very low level. So I don't think Hwang is ready for this. He looked decent against Martin Day. He did have a decent first round, hit him with a couple shots, but by the end of round one, he was already hurt, and in round two, he had no shot. He was done. I think the only reason this fight gets to see round three, and I don't think it's going to round three. I don't disagree with the round one, but I think it's round one or round two. Giannis gets to finish. The only reason it gets to round three is if Hwang has some success wrestling, which I haven't seen any chinks in the armor. Giannis, he's fought better wrestlers already. You know what I mean? And I did watch one of Hwang's fights from college when he was at Skyline College. I watched one of his wrestling matches at college. Like that's the tape study I'm doing right now. I think Giannis is going to be minus 250. If he's anything under minus 250, I would put 2, 3, 4 units on. I think Giannis gets a contract, and I think he gets a finish in round one or round two. So I agree with you. So again, I think we're 4 for 4 with the agreements, and I'm gonna introduce the last fight, 5 for 5. I even got our ring of combat, just so everybody knows. We're from Jersey, and we
Yep.
cover ring of combat fights. So if I zoom in there, you can see Joseph Pfeiffer, Fat Matt fought Matt Foster, and then here
Body
you
bag.
can see Joey in the middle there, on the bottom, right? Can you see that there, Drew? When he fought Elijah. So again, we've been at 2 of Pfeiffer's 4 fights in Ring of Combat. He travels, so there's gonna be this is gonna be in the small cage in Vegas. But Joey fight body bags travels. He fills up Tropicana and Atlantic City when he fights.
Mhm.
Everybody's there to see body bags, and it's a fun fight because of all his people. You know what I mean? So with that being said, he's not going to have that crowd behind him. He's going to have to do this by himself. and he hasn't fought the best competition. I'll just introduce it as this: his one loss was against Jovan Patti, who actually has a fight in Contender Series later this summer, also, believing within 2 weeks. Patti has some pretty good fighters that he's fought on his resume, but Patti was able to finish him in a second round submission. Now, Dustin has
Dustin.
has a couple submission wins. This guy, and the funny thing is, these guys are both from Pennsylvania, right?
Yep,
They
they
were
both
both.
fight out of Pennsylvania. Yep.
Well, but Dustin, I believe he's moved and relocated to Germany at this point because he's been fighting out of Germany.
I
Um,
mean, he's number one in Germany and number
yeah.
one in Western Europe. So
And he trains with Peter Sabota, who's already in the UFC. So again, you talk about the pedigree and that next level fighting, partnership that happens with training as a team and those things that we just talked about in the last fight. Like, I want to say that Pfeiffer's in a good spot here, but I don't. I think he's going to get finished in this fight. So Drew, I'm gonna leave it to you. Give me your breakdown. Give me your line. Let me know what you think.
okay, so I'm gonna start with what you said just a little because I picked out something you said. You said Dustin only has a couple submission wins. Okay, let me just count this: a win by twister, a win by guillotine, a win by rear naked choke, a win by arm triangle, a win by knee bar, uh, and everything else was either by punches or a unanimous decision. So my man can scramble and my man can roll, and not and just like Swain, I feel like this is like a refined, you know, prototype of like not even Swain because I don't like to compare the fighters or call them this guy is this guy, but this dude is the real deal, Dustin here. And we have been to Ring of Combats, and I take nothing away from Ring of Combat. I myself hope to one day fight for the Ring of Combat, but in all honesty, every time that we've been to the Ring of Combat and watched Body Bags fight, he's had some impressive wins. He's fought some guys, and he is the bigger fighter. He's a huge guy, man. He's a big guy, and I think he's the bigger fighter in this face off too. But when it comes to the pure finisher and the guy who's on a 9 fight win streak right now, and I feel like has faced some possibly better competition considering he's fighting out of Europe, and those guys are, everyone who comes out of Europe is pretty legit, to say the least. Um, in this fight, I look for Pfeiffer being the inexperienced fighter here. So if I have to go for a favorite, it's going to be Dustin. Look for him to probably be like minus 170, minus 180 in that range. And that's only because of considering the two, he's the smoother fighter. He's the one that puts the strikes together better. Looks better in there on the ground. Looks to get this fight up against the fence and to the ground. In my opinion, Body Bag's only shot is, hopefully he can put the punches together and the combinations together and maybe get it to the ground. But if he gets it to the ground, he's going to be in deep water. So that's the reason why, like this fight, I don't really see it going Body Bags' way. So I'm with you, bud. Here I'm going with Dustin.
Yeah, so I think we're 5 for 5. We agree on every fight this week. Last week we only agreed on one, right? We disagreed on 4 of them.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
week I think we're 5 for 5. Yeah, I think Dustin has the patience. Being literally ringside, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
ringside for Ring of Combat covering those fights. We have the credentials, but Pfeiffer just doesn't seem patient enough. You know what I
Nah.
mean? He doesn't. The game plan isn't put together. Again, he's 23 years old. So when we saw him fight, he was 21, 22, and we actually missed his last 2 fights, right? We didn't see his loss
Yeah,
because that was
no.
during basketball season. Again, I coach high school basketball, so I can't always get down there during the season. So if he fights like November to February, and I think his last fight was February actually,
Yeah, it
this past
was.
February. I don't really have a chance to get there during those months. So those 4 or 5 months, I don't get there. So I miss his last 2 fights, but he doesn't. He looks like he's in a rush to try to get that knockout. He wants the body back, is what he wants, and he's not setting up shots. He's not, you know, he's not putting his whole game together. And again, if you watch the highlight films of him, you'll see him take people down and do all this other stuff. But when you're there ringside, it doesn't seem natural. It doesn't seem like he's putting it all together and making good decisions in there. Dustin, on the other hand, I think does all that. He's experienced. He's 28 years old. He's fighting. He fights again in camp with UFC fighters. I think that experience is going to shine through. I think he's going to be patient. I wouldn't be surprised if this fight goes to decision, just because of Dustin's patience. But I kind of see a late second round, maybe even a third round finish by Dustin. Body bags could win this fight. I'm not saying he can't, but I think his only path is to connect with a big shot. And I think Dustin is going to not let him get that big shot. Even when it goes to the ground, I haven't seen body bags willing to really, let his BJJ be put on display. And I think that Dustin, with all those submission victories, I think he's obviously well versed on the ground. So I think he's in a great position here. I think Dustin is the play, and I kind of agree. It's probably going to be minus 150 to minus 200. Again, all these lines that we're throwing out there, if the line comes out, I have a feeling one or two of these lines are going to come out, and it's just going to be off based on what we just said. And if you can hit that line early, I'm hitting it. I'm definitely hitting it early. If I see any lines off, I'm hitting it with 2 units right away. You know what I mean? And then I'll let everything adjust, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do with parlays and go from there. I think last week I hit my parlay. Last week was the first week I can honestly say I thought that a losing fighter was going to get a contract. It was the first. It was the first. But what was the fight last week? I'm gonna forget the guy's name, but it was part of my parlay. The guy I had in my parlay wound up winning the fight. But if you look on Twitter or anywhere else, even Dana said it. Like, everybody else thought the other guy won the fight. I forget the guys' names now. I thought Dana was gonna give both of them a contract. I don't think he gave either one of them a contract, but that's more or less where I'm at. But Drew, we'll leave it at that. That's 45 minutes on 5 fights for Contender Series. Again, we watched a lot of tape. We'll post this up. I may even post out bets for this, my bets, if you want to post out your bets.
Yeah, I will.
Put them out early, and go from there. Just because we don't even have lines to tell you. I know what I would bet based on the line, but I don't know what the lines are, so I can't really be totally honest with you. Anything else? Did we forget anything?
Not really, man. I'm just here. Yeah, 2 questions. Who gets the contract in the last 2 fights? Joey or Dustin? And who's the fight before that? Or Yanez and Brady? I think we said Yanez gets the contract, but in the Joe fight, that's the last thing I want to ask. Because I think I asked.
Yeah, I think this could be a card where there's 5 contracts. I think Vanessa's going to get a finish, and I think she gets a contract. I think Yanez gets a finish, and he gets a contract. And I think Dustin gets a finish, and he gets a contract. So I think this could be a card where I think Laramie gets a contract with a finish. If Swain finishes in first round, I think he gets a contract. And honestly, with the way that Adams and Impact, whoever wins that fight, especially if it's a finish, they're going to get a. I mean, I'm calling it that there's going to be 5 contracts on this card, because I just think that a lot of these fights are going to finish. And again, these guys are ripe for this. This is, in my opinion, this is definitely better than the first card from top to bottom. And for most cards, this is one of the better Contender Series cards that I've seen.
Yeah, I agree. I actually really, really agree. I mean, this oddly enough might be one of the cards that we agree on almost everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the only odd thing that I might see is Laramie. He doesn't get a contract, and it's only because he's super young. But if he comes out and wins in, really, 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 really great fashion, where like he just shows experience beyond his years, which I feel like he can do. Yeah, man, I'm excited for this card.
Well, I'll give you what I think.
I'm almost at a loss for words. I'm excited.
I'm gonna go back to this, and this is gonna be my closing thought. I think Impa was a guy who was raw. That's why he didn't get a contract. He was young and he was raw. Laramie isn't raw. You know what I mean? He's ready for this. So he's young, but I think that he's the kind of guy that you put in the UFC and you just handpick his opponents for the next 3 years. Give him 2 fights a year, handpick his opponents, let him move into Vegas, let him train at the Performance Institute, and you got yourself a specimen right here. Kind of even looks like Drago a little bit if you look at him.
Yeah, Drago like a whole foot smaller.
A Canadian Drago. All right, man. Good luck with your bets this week.